Welcome to Toy to Tool Virtual Reality and Construction. My name is Aaron French.
And I'm Todd Wambeke.
And we're from Ryan Companies. We're a general contractor over in Minneapolis. So you might be wondering, what's a construction company doing at a game developers conference? It seems kind of like a weird mix. But the truth is, we're using a lot of the same technology that you guys are using in your AAA games and indie studios and things like that. We're using the same game engines, same software, a lot of the same tools. So there's quite a bit more crossover than you'd be led to believe.
So again, my name is Todd Wambeke. I'm Virtual Construction Manager for Ryan Companies. I manage Ryan Companies' BIM and VR initiatives, technology and integration.
Again, I'm Aaron. I'm also part of our virtual construction department. I'm our multimedia design manager. And I'm part of a small team where we're doing primarily 3D animation, like still renderings, and more recently, video games and VR tech.
So a little bit about Ryan Companies. We're an innovative and diversified company specializing in 5 key market sectors, including development, architecture and engineering, construction, real estate management, and capital markets. Ryan Companies champions the use of leading-edge technology to help win projects, drive growth, and streamline business processes. So today we'll be talking about virtual reality evolution within the construction industry and specifically integration within Ryan Companies. So VR industry growth. The industry itself is really beginning to mature, and as we see it coming together, we're able to integrate a lot of those systems into our existing workflows and really leverage VR to help improve latency in design making decisions and reduce schedule delays. So VR in general, I think, was initially thought of as pretty much just a extension of a gaming platform. We're seeing that VR is being used by a number of different industries, from sales to marketing, training. Healthcare has used it for well over 20 years to treat PTSD, autism. So there's a number of different use case scenarios that are really beginning to come back, and we can see the value in it. So recently, there was a report that estimated that VR would be an $80 billion market by the end of 2025. That by the end of 2018 alone, that there would be 200 to 300% growth. So what this means for Ryan is that as we begin to see the value of VR as well, we are continuing to invest in that technology, and we're also investing in people that can come in and help integrate all that technology and those gaming engines into our platforms.
All right, so VR today in construction. Why are we using VR? So VR has been a tool to help us with our risk management. So it's essentially like, how can we save money? How can we reduce cost? So through sales and marketing, design optimizations, just throughout construction, and even getting the client's confirmation of the design. A lot of times designs change as even during the build process. So everyone has seen, like your traditional architect's renderings, right? They're just pretty picture on paper, or a 3D animation. But the beauty with VR is we can drop the owner directly into their new investment, right in their building. They can interact with the space. They can feel ceiling heights. You can feel, how long a corridor is, and it just brings this emotional experience that you just don't really get with your traditional 2D renderings and animation. So, and it's really fun to see. People really love interacting in VR. So, kind of our first sales experience, or this should probably more appropriately calling it the VR sales experiment. A few years back when Unreal first became free just to download, I downloaded it, kind of played around with it. My background's more in just traditional renderings, not so much video game design. And I just thought it was super cool. Like, we're trying to figure out, how can we use this in the company to help us make some money. So at the time, we were building this high-end apartment complex over by US Bank Stadium. And it was kind of a higher profile job. It was part of this really huge, like this giant development down in Minneapolis. So I dropped kind of the models that we had into VR, or into Unreal, excuse me. And we started propping it with furniture, with all the appliances that the interior designer had spec'd. And then we kind of pitched it to the leasing office. So, we're using this as a tool to drive applicants and try to get more tenants into this building. And it was, we didn't really know what we were going to expect. Like, it could be just kind of cool, something fun to do this week, or it could be just a huge platform for something new. And it turned out to be a really great experience. It was kind of a home run for us. So within a couple of weeks, we had a desktop version of this apartment where the realtor could just cruise around and show tenants this space. A couple of weeks later, I got a hold of a DK2, an Oculus, and we were given virtual tours, like a week later. So it was just a really powerful tool. It was a real game changer for us.
It's an opportunity ultimately for us to add value services to our clients when we're looking at multiple proposals, or when we know that we're part of multiple bid packages. It's a way for Ryan companies to distinguish ourselves as a company as well.
Yeah, and this is just the cinematic from that first project. A lot of things came out of this project that we didn't expect. We got design influencers. We're going through scope, going over finishes with the interior designers, looking at different layouts like access and maintenance, visual lines. It was just, we had no idea that this was going to be more than just a sales tool. So it kind of evolved as this project went forward. Enabling informed design decisions. So this is a surgical center and optometry suite in Beverly Hills. This was kind of our first real client-based project. And it was another really high-profile one. There was a really big budget, so we're like, let's do something really cool to really impress the owners. This is going to be another great sales tool. But it ended up being more of a design review tool than anything. So I started working with an interior designer with this architect that we were working with on this job. And if you've ever worked with an interior designer, they're kind of like your art director. They're constantly hovering over your shoulder and breathing down your neck and telling you everything's wrong, even though it's their design. So we ended up doing 2 schemes with this. So this one on screen right now is just kind of this electric blue scheme. There was another one that was kind of this bumblebee yellow, black, scary thing. It was just really high-end Hollywood designs, the high-profile clients. So the owners had 2, they couldn't decide between the 2. So we programmed in with the press of a button, you could go from scheme 1 to scheme 2 as you were going through. So rather than re-rendering several images or 2 animations, you're able just to do it in real time. So it's a huge time saver. Enabling project buy-in. So about a year and a half ago, it was announced that the Ryan headquarters was going to be moving offices. So we're currently over in downtown Minneapolis. We're moving over towards kind of the stadium downtown east. And this was designed in-house by our architects team, but there were a lot of concerns by employees about this mezzanine level where people were going to be sitting underneath this mezzanine. The renderings that we had gotten from our architects department, they weren't really doing it justice, right? Like, couldn't tell how high this actually was. People thought it was going to be claustrophobic. They're going to be working out of a cave and they're going to hate it. So we took this as a really great opportunity to take the architect's model. We brought it over, we used Maya, so we went through Maya, kind of optimized the space, brought it into Unreal, and then we set up a big tour. So we had probably 100 people from our company walking through the new office in VR, and it really alleviated a lot of fears of this dreaded mezzanine level. Here we have Pat Ryan, he's our president and CEO. This is the first time he's ever used VR, and he was a natural. Like, he was, it looked like he'd been doing this for years. Like he's secretly going home and playing Call of Duty. So it was, we also got to see how hundreds of people interact with VR. Up until this point, we were showing it to 2 or 3 people at a time in a small leasing office, or we were going out to site and just setting up. So it was a great opportunity to see when a design is simplistic, we can really just whip it through a bunch of people, and it was a great tool.
It really is a great opportunity ultimately for a lot of different people to be able to actually interact with the design rather than just getting a graphic that you look at and you get a sense of kind of the colors and maybe the materials. I mean, when you put on a VR headset, you can look around. I mean, you do get that sense of space, and I think it's a completely different experience. So it's been a great opportunity for us. So virtual reality and BIM, I'm not sure how familiar everybody is with BIM, but it's an acronym for Building Information Modeling. It's pretty much revolutionized architecture and engineering over the last couple decades. Ryan Company was an early adopter of BIM in our architectural and engineering division. Ultimately what BIM is a 3D representation of a building. So as we look at everything that makes up a building, from the windows, curtain walls, ceiling, walls, floors, everything ultimately gets modeled. We can embed information into that as well. And so that software has continued to evolve over the last 20, 30 years, and it's becoming easier and easier to develop construction documents, animations, renderings, animations, but I guess fabrication level models that we can pull out all that information and send off to CNC machines and have pieces and parts coming in. So along with that, VR, there's been a number of specialized companies that are coming along and enabling BIM to VR enabled software, so it's increasing the use and application of VR within our industry. So our largest project case to date is called the Waterfront Project. It was a 550,000 square foot office building for a prominent tech company. We were actually able to win this project because we were able to display our technical capabilities. So part of the project, it was a very, very aggressive timeline on this project. And so because of that, we decided that it made sense for us to develop a number of key areas into VR so that we could get design decisions earlier in the process to help streamline that decision making and allow us to continue with that aggressive schedule. So we decided a couple of the key common spaces that we would develop included the lobby, which we saw, a dining area, game arcade, 75,000 square feet, 55,000 square foot typical office level, which included all the break rooms, offices, and kind of everything else that would have been included in that, as well as executive suites. So it was a pretty extensive build out, and it was a great opportunity for us again to showcase our capabilities to this client. So the development of VR is kind of a evolving process. I mean, it takes a lot to get it to where it needs to be in VR. Ultimately, we're able to take the BIM model from the architects, and we typically see that those models are at about 60%. Architects will typically do a lot of 2D detailing, so when we go into VR, it exposes everything that you look at. So I mean, when you look and you can see gaps that are missing here and there and everywhere in a model, we've got to go in, we've got to kind of clean up all that information. So we're looking through, you know, reams and reams of documents. I mean, we're going through details, hundreds of details, graphics, renderings, design packages, and it's a really extensive process. So we'll also begin to have design review sessions with the architects, with Aaron, to be able to kind of clean up.
Yeah, and you know, the beauty of doing these design reviews in real time is, you know, we can change a lot of these materials and stuff on the fly. There's no need to re-render. You're not sitting around waiting for your render farm to kick out, you know, 30-second animation. You know, or you didn't just pick out a view that you thought was really pretty and you're hiding the ugly stuff and they want to see the ugly stuff. And then, you know, being able to, this slide is showing from a WebEx meeting that we were going through on this design, you know, changing like paint color. I've had direction from interior designers saying that this wall needs to be more blue. Like, I don't know what you're talking about. Like, what is more blue?
As a construction company, I mean, we need to know what that is because, you know, architects will specify colors. I mean, that needs to be an exact thing that we can go out and we can order. So if it wasn't what they thought, we need to know that early on because it's going to cost time and money later on in the project. So the earlier we can kind of begin this review process, the better we ultimately are. So virtual reality evolution within construction. We've gone through the design review process in VR a number of times. We've seen the value. So we're really beginning to look at other areas of our industry to see where we can begin to utilize VR, whether it's from the perspective of a tower crane, looking down as they're hoisting tons and tons of material and there's heavy equipment running around, and there's people all over the place. I mean, construction sites are inherently a pretty dangerous place. So the more we can kind of look at the project schedule, we can look at all the activities and all the people that we have scheduled at any time, and begin to simulate all those processes and then run through different scenarios, we can optimize that and also increase the safety and efficiency. So again, with simulation and optimization, we're taking all those tasks that make up everything that it takes to put a building together, and trying to go through, automate that, again, whether it's our heavy equipment that's running through, whether it's kind of our actual buildings being put together, anything that we think will get a benefit from being developed into VR, we're going to take that through and be able to kind of get people's input from that and help kind of flush out any issues earlier in the process.
So kind of industry predictions. The construction workforce is changing. It kind of has this idea, like people outside the industry think that everyone who works in construction is going to a job site, we're digging a hole, we're welding, that kind of stuff, but it's a lot more office-based now than you'd think. Baby boomers they're starting to retire. Like that generation is kind of like getting to the point where we're done. Like we worked our whole lives, and now it's kind of Gen X and Millennial are kind of driving this workforce. Generation X, game technology has been around throughout that entire generation. Millennials, we kind of grew up with it. It's kind of part of our lives. It's very familiar. And the reason this is important, a stat like that, is when I package up a game project or we ship out an HTC Vive to another office, there's very little training. So I'll just send the file via web. We'll ship the headset, UPS or freight, and I don't have to actually fly out there and show somebody how to set something up. It's just such an integrated part of our lives that we don't have to do much. And then, VR, we really feel like, I know that it came from game tech, and its primary source of the industry, or its primary function is in entertainment and games, and I'm a gamer. I like playing games just as much as anyone else. But the way that we're using VR, it really does feel like it was kind of built for construction. We've been going over a lot of, stats and stuff, but, it really kind of drives home this point that when we're building something, we can just do it in VR. We don't have to actually physically go to a site and build it. So a lot of like leasing offices will have these showcase rooms where you walk in and there's this $250,000 layout that an interior designer picked out because they pick out the best furniture. It's not just our normal IKEA apartments. And we can just build this virtually. We can put a headset in a leasing center. You can walk in, put a headset on. You can see any unit in the entire apartment. And it's just another like cost-saving measure.
We're a national company, so we work on a lot of remote projects. I mean, we have projects going in probably 60 to 70% of the country right now. So, having a mobile virtual solution allows us to bring consultants kind of together virtually, where it would be very difficult and cost prohibitive otherwise, because we're also working with consultants who are working remotely as well. So, if we've got 10 to 20 different consultants, try to kind of get everybody together at any given time, it takes quite a bit. So again, with VR, we're able to bring the job site to people's offices, and it really is a benefit to us. So industry advancements, we're keeping our eye on a number of different things. We continue this. We think that as the market continues to evolve, and the user case scenarios kind of come in, and the value is seen as some consumer applications continue to develop that are customized to different industries. User adoption will continue to improve, and more and more value will ultimately come from that advancement.
So how do we get to where we want to be? In a nutshell, we want to start hiring more game developers. We need more creatives, more programmers, more people that are thinking outside the box, where we can utilize all these tools that somebody who has a background in financing, they're not going to know how to do this stuff. We've been partnering with outside firms kind of just to help with our workload, because the technology is moving so fast, we can't really keep up. So like, we're expanding. We think that VR is going to be a huge thing in construction. It's not a fad, it's not a trend, it's not going anywhere. I'm looking forward to more wireless headsets. Like, that's kind of our biggest limitation right now. And as time goes on, technology is going to get better and better.
Yeah, I think one of the biggest things for us is the perception of the construction industry in general. I think people think it's just kind of lumbering people with hard hats and just out there kind of swearing and yelling and who knows what. But we have a very diverse workforce. And even a lot of it, it's always surprising to see a lot of these older people that aren't scared of technology. And we had an example of the waterfront project where we developed this VR, and we had, 10 to 15 of these superintendents kind of going for a walkthrough of VR, and they just absolutely ate it up. So, getting out, letting people know about our industry, letting people know about the options, letting people know that we need innovative, analytical people that are willing to join our industry and also drive innovation is a big thing for us.
Yeah, and creatives in the construction industry, like, very valuable assets. There's not that many, and you're very highly regarded. So, I came out from UW Stout. I have a degree in fine arts. So when I first got my start in construction, it was, kind of shocking that I wasn't moving out to Hollywood or out to LA. And but I love it. Like, it's a very innovative industry, and there's just so much more opportunity, coming up. But outside of the traditional game industry, there's more opportunities for using game tech, just outside of creating your traditional games.
Yeah, we don't necessarily even, we anticipate or we know where we would like to see a lot of the technology going, but getting people, obviously, that our developers, our coders are going to make these applications a lot more user-friendly ultimately, and kind of get us where we need to be, that way we can stay at the leading edge of our industry. So. Yep, that's it. Kind of our presentation today. Does anybody have any questions? Or?
Curious how soon you think AR is going to be part of the toolbox, and whether, there's certainly benefits to the full immersion when you talked about like visualizing like all the apartment layouts and the lines, but like how soon do you think you might be using AR collaboratively inside your company
Sure.
to advance your own process?
Yeah. We're already using AR in a few selective case scenarios. Most specifically, we've developed 3D virtual mock-ups. So in developing construction projects, there's usually, 5% of the budget is just for mock-ups to be able to go through a certain amount of testing to make sure that the detailing, the architecture design is going to meet code requirements, wind requirements, heating, loading requirements. So we've begun to develop these virtually, and we've put those into augmented reality as well, so that when we're looking at them, whether it's through an iPad or we've looked at some other applications, whether it's truly a hologram, we can begin to disassemble them and pull them apart. And it's another opportunity. We can do a lot more of those than we can do an actual physical model, so we can run through a lot more scenarios. And so again, with operations and maintenance and some different applications we've looked at, such as a DAPRI helmet you could put on, you could begin to look at like the thermal loading of a building, and you can start to begin to embed a lot of that building information modeling. All the information really is kind of one of the key things within BIM. And so you can begin to go through and just kind of toggle as you're walking around a building. Looking at all the mechanical systems, looking at everything that's behind a wall without having to run back to an office or carry around, a huge binder of paper. You have all this information embedded. So there's already a few things that we've been kind of playing around with and trying to see where we can continue to evolve within that. So I think for us right now, though, VR I think has been the best application for our specific needs.
Yeah, we're probably still, as a timeline, like a few years away from really adapting AR, because it's kind of a whole different monster. We're still just taking 3D models and bringing them into a game engine, and then you can just put a headset on as long as it's optimized. But AR it's kind of out of our element right now, and so we're just kind of looking for help on that.
Yeah, so with a lot of it, to be honest, I mean, this computing power continues to improve. I mean, the data that's included in these models, and the file sizes are huge. So that's why, gaming engines are kind of perfect for this as well. It makes these models a little bit easier to navigate as we're going through them. So it's kind of a win-win for us. Does anybody else have any questions? Yes?
So you mentioned that you kind of just drop models into a game engine. Have you done much more than that in terms of like, maybe like a designer wants to actually point to the wall and say, I want this blue instead, instead of actually having to have someone know exactly what's going on, kind of making more tools or things like that?
So like more interactivity, kind of.
Yeah.
Yeah. Again, like I'm not a programmer, so a lot of the stuff I'm just getting plugins. I'm kind of just reading on forums and getting by. But we are doing more interactions, especially with paint colors, different like floor finishes, moving furniture around, different upholsteries. But it's still pretty minor stuff. So we do program Easter eggs. Easter eggs are good. People like to throw rubber chickens around the office. But
I would add to that, some of what we've done is kind of a final product review in some of the VR that we're developing, where we want to know all the final colors and processes. We do feel that it would be an excellent design, not just a review to find out what the final product is like, is a design assist tool ultimately to be immersively in that space and working through different design rendition selections, because I mean there's a lot of different options that everybody's looking at ultimately. So there is already a few BIM to VR direct applications that you can be within the VR model and making those selections, and it'll tie right back to our BIM models as well and make those changes kind of directly. So I mean the software has come a long way just within the last 5 years really. So it's really kind of trying to drive that into specific projects and really kind of get users in there realizing the benefits, and then it just kind of begins to kind of carry forward from there. So, any other questions?
Do you prefer Vive or Oculus, or do you use both? It doesn't matter.
we use both. I think we've kind of leaned towards the Vive mainly because it came with motion controllers right away. I think it's a pretty 50-50 split. It's just more of a personal preference for us for HTC.
Again, depending on kind of what the task, what the need. I mean, we've used Samsung Gear VRs. Within some of our models, it's very easy to kind of put together kind of stereoscopic panoramas, and we can just kind of click those through, and we can send those to clients pretty easily. With the full kind of HTC Vive, currently where it's wired, we have to have a pretty hefty computer and, this whole kind of case that we're bringing along or shipping. So, we're really looking for that, again, with the industry advancements, kind of scaling that down and making it still even that much more mobile. I think it'll help in general. We have time for one last question. Well, thank everybody for your time. We hope to talk to you in the future sometime if you have an interest in our industry.
Thanks, guys.